Well, hello, everybody. I am Andrew Spey. This is FRL. I'm filling in for Mr. Christian Piles. He is enjoying some quality time in the Shenandoah Valley, almost heaven. But we are joined in the studio with the regular gang. To my right is Daniel Lobdell, the young wrestling nomad. And in the back is Kyle Bradkey with the Eagle of Freedom and the support of friend of the show, Casey Kreider, and the Denver Broncos. And then joining us from Easton live via satellite, the most exclusive technology available right now, it's Willie Saylor. And we got a lot to talk about because a lot of these guys all just came back from Iowa City and I would say, extremely thrilling, very fun Who's Number One. So, Willie, what do you got to say about that awesome event?
It was good. It was a lot of nerves went into it. I about had a nervous breakdown the day of.
Well,
I mean, there was. I don't know. I wanted to try something new with those. I wanted to try those walkouts, the tunnel shots of the kids coming out, but like personnel-wise, we're like, okay, you do this, you do that, and it was, I don't know. We kept changing roles at the last few moments, and I was like, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna be back because usually I do the on-mat interviews.
Right.
And I like doing them, but I wanted the tunnel things to go right, and I thought, man, I talked production into doing it, so I might as well stay back there and just own it. You know what I mean? And I did, but I was super nervous, like right before. But all's well that ends well, and I think it ended well. The wrestling was great. I thought the crowd was really great. Although they told us that the final number was 2,500 fans, which I don't believe that.
It looked bigger and it sounded big. I mean, just watching the broadcast at home, when Jesse Ibarra and all the future Hawkeyes went out there, you could hear it coming through. I mean, even if it was that little, like, kudos to those guys for making all that noise because they were pumped for the wrestling.
I mean, everybody there was telling me that it was more than that. Ryan Morningstar told me it was more than that. And really, it's sort of vanity in wanting the number to be bigger. Right. The fact of the matter is the crowd was there. The crowd was good, and I would like, when you have an event in that big of an arena, you just want it to not be embarrassingly empty, and it was not close to that at all. It was good.
Well, it also,
what do you think, Nomad?
Was like 1,000 more people that have ever watched Who's Number One live, correct?
Most well-attended Who's Number One in history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Well, if it's 2,500, it's it's bigger than any Who's Number One the attendance before. But I mean that's the low end of the right 2,500. Yeah. I think there was 35. Most people told me like it looked like 4,000. So.
The same undercounting kind of idea happened when Iowa wrestled outdoors against Oklahoma State in the football stadium. The announced attendance was like 45, but it sure looked like at least, I don't know, 3/4 of that stadium was filled up, and that's I don't know, 80-something per thousand person stadium, 90.
Yeah. The thing there was that I heard from people who were there that day that after 15 seconds, the ticket counters were basically overwhelmed. And people are just going in.
Right, because you don't staff it up like you would a football game because you're not expecting an actual full stadium.
Right. Meanwhile, a relatively large amount of people, even as compared to a football game, showed up. And supposedly a lot of people got a free wrestling match that day.
Yeah, which I say, yep, let them enjoy. But, yeah, I agree, Will, regardless, the crowd showed up and was loud and supportive and looked good. Watching it, I mean, I would not have guessed that number just from eyeballing it at home.
Yeah, and we do a lot of stuff on Friday with the kids as far as the press conference and gear and running around town and going to dinner and stuff. And Iowa City was way groovier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little podunk college town, and it was cool. I liked it a lot.
It was so groovy that last time Nomad was there, he decided to climb a building.
That is true. Last time I was in Iowa City, I climbed a building.
And
we walked past
incorrectly
that very
identified.
spot.
He also incorrectly identified a Chicago accent.
Yeah, you were way off.
Yep.
Yeah, it was I enjoyed when we were there through the Final X road trip 2 years ago. I thought it was a pretty chill town. You could definitely, find whatever you're kind of looking for in that college town.
Yeah,
So,
I like Iowa City.
To the wrestling, we open up at 132, and by the way, I didn't watch very much wrestling during Who's Number One because I was back in the tunnel, but I would hear the roar that first exchange with Mendez and Jack, and Mendez goes up early and Jack comes back, and there's that final exchange, and I'm just thinking to myself, dear Lord, first match of the night is going to be controversial, and I think they got it right ultimately. I think ultimately, and Christian said on Twitter, that's difficult to call. It's going to be difficult to call every time. You're not going to stop seeing the same situation. I reward the attacker, in my opinion. Reward the attacker, because what else are you going to do?
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. Tie goes to the runner. Tie goes to the attacker.
I think in general, though, we've experienced this before. I think back to 2017 when Malik Heinzelman and Kurt McHenry had one of my favorite all-time Who's Number One matches. And when the first match, guys come out and they're putting up points, and there's a controversial ending, and guys are getting into it. It just kind of sets the tone for the entire event, and I think that kind of speaks to Willie. Kind of racks his brain, spends a lot of time thinking about the match order and how the card should go and kind of the flow of the event. And obviously it makes sense to start with the 4-man because you want to give the kids time to, since they're the only ones who are going to have to wrestle a second match. But when Ryan Jack and Jesse Mendez come out and they're flinging points on the board, then it sends a message to the rest of the kids all right, I guess we're scrapping tonight. And beyond that, kind of, it's funny when Willie asked me about the crowd because once the event started, I was in the back the whole time. There was a room off of the ramp where the guys entered, where Willie was talking about those entrance shots, said that he was, really trying to get perfect. And the plan was to have the kids that were on deck come down and just kind of hang out there. But after Willie did the walkthroughs, we thought the kids were all going to go back up in the wrestling room and, work out and warm up. But Richie Figs wanted to just stay down there. And because Richie Figs stayed down there, then other kids kind of started floating down there. And by the time the first match ended, there was probably, between kids and coaches, 20 people in this hospitality room. And we had the stream on, and everybody's getting into it, right? Saying that's 2 Jack, that's 2 Mendez, that's 2 and 2. And then up in the wrestling room, I don't know how many of you guys have been in the wrestling room in Carver Hawkeye, but they have TVs, right? And so they have bleachers and they have TVs. So there's all the kids down there in the green room watching it. There's all the people upstairs in the wrestling room watching it, and everybody got into it. And so not only did it kind of set the tone in terms of what they need to do, everyone was able to watch it and got into it.
That's a really good point. Because a lot of people said afterwards, it was like, man, Willie, great show. And I said, well, the kids let it fly. I mean, that's what made it great, And I didn't really even think about that. No, man, that's a good point. When the guys start throwing out points in the first match of the night and it comes down to the wire, and all the kids were watching in that green room, so to speak, and then upstairs in the room, and it set the tone for everybody, I guess, for the wrestlers and for the crowd. But that is something, when I first determined, I'm like, okay, I hate to ask Nomad to be back in the thing. Nomad, would you mind doing post-match interviews? Which means Nomad has to basically not watch wrestling and stay back in the tunnels. And then even myself, I was like, all right, I guess I'm not going to watch any wrestling tonight. I'm going to be back in the tunnels with these guys. I was sort of bummed about it at first. And after about 1 or 2 matches, I was like, this is where it's at. Back here. Watch it. I can always go back and watch the match. But I can never like relive what's I'm witnessing back there. The kids, their focus, their attitude, the coaches, how they deal with coaches, their just the things they say and the things they do. Right? No, man, it was pretty darn neat.
Yeah, that was to me I've been to 3 or 4 Who's Number Ones now. Well, actually, I guess more than that before I worked at Flow. But the experience there of having a room like that and just the constant rotation of people and, the Blair guys coming in and out depending upon, if Shane's up or Trevor's up or Travis is up. And then when they are up, they're on the mat watching, then they come back in and they're hanging out. And seeing the relationships of the various kids, right? Like somebody comes back, gets a big win, and, one of their friends daps them up, like a 52, dapping up a 38 or whatever, guys that you didn't know that they were buddies, or guys that kind of developed a relationship that weekend that maybe they're warming up together and they were hyping each other up. That's going to be something that's like you said, Will, it's something that we can't relive and something that I'm going to remember, and I hope that going forward, all future Who's Number Ones, we have an area like that where these kids and these coaches can experience it in that unique way.
Now that's what I call wrestling fellowship.
That's wrestling fellowship at its finest, I tell you.
Yeah, you're right, no, man. I mean, whether we go back to Iowa or wherever, I don't know. The concept we should keep the same, where that atmosphere, and it was sort of a fail by us, but we didn't really know that it was going to go that way. But next time, for sure, we need to capture those moments.
Yeah, get some
we need to
pics,
have a guy
camera. Yeah.
But we didn't really know it was going to happen like that.
Well, Nomad kept putting in like our chat that like, wow, this is amazing, this is the coolest place ever, and then filling in no details and giving us no glimpses behind the curtain, even stuff that if you didn't, I don't know, if the guys didn't know they were on camera, you didn't want to put it out on like public consumption. But this is kind of the first time we're actually getting the full picture.
It's the most Nomad thing ever. He does it in the chat all the time.
It's a real
He'll
Nomad
say
thing.
something like crazy cliffhanger in the chat, and then we'll be like, "What do you mean?"
Disappear.
And then he'll just won't come back in the chat for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Classic.
Nomad. Classic Nomad.
So Mendez wins on a late and a call that went to review, and then 32 Van Ness beats Serrano. Serrano was up at the break, and then Shane Van Ness does what Shane Van Ness does and comes back late, and it's something we would see later on in the night. Figs over Poulin, rather controlled match there. I don't have these matches in order on the sheet, but what was next?
Well, Ibarra Burks was the third match.
Ibarra.
And that one was low scoring, right? But there's some good exchanges, and those two have wrestled before. They'd wrestled in freestyle in the Akron semis, and Ibarra ended up winning again. So Jacason, second appearance at Who's Number One, and his coach Zach Dominguez was there, and I'm actually wearing the MWC shirt, sweatshirt here. So shout out to Zach Dominguez for being one of our coaches again. But
I knew that match was going to be low scoring.
Well, it's dang near impossible to get to Jesse Ibarra's legs. Every match he wrestles, there's basically no takedowns. And then Jacason is somebody who, both with his Greco background, with his athleticism, kind of just the way he wrestles, he's another one that's really hard to score on because he can kind of get himself out of positions pretty easily, especially in folk style. But then when the match ended, to the point about the crowd, the crowd went nuts, right? They supported the future Hawkeye. And then, this also happened with Patrick Kennedy later on, but some of the Hawkeyes came back, and, Spencer Lee was talking to Jesse and saying he's proud of him and excited to be his teammate. So that was another thing that was cool about the green room, and then just the event in general, was seeing the Hawkeyes very clearly support the event, support their guys, and whether it was the crowd or the actual team itself.
It was interesting to me that the whole team was there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Hawkeye team was there watching. I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't know, maybe they're interested, maybe they're not, but like the whole team was there. And the Hawkeye Wrestling clubs, all the girls were there. I didn't see. I didn't see Sammy Brooks, but I bet you he was there too.
He's in.
Gilman
Isn't he in Dagestan right now?
he was there practicing and stuff like Thursday and Friday. I don't know,
but I think that was. I mean, that whole group went. There's a whole group.
Yeah. Well, all the Hawkeyes were there watching. It was pretty cool.
Shouldn't we shout out to the Hawkeye Wrestling Club for buying up and then donating a whole bunch of tickets?
Oh yeah.
I mean that's a cool thing that a event like Who's Number One feeds off that kind of support, and that really makes it a better event. And having kids that otherwise wouldn't go or wouldn't know about it, and they reached out to local clubs and youth clubs and helped pack those stands with some deserving spectators.
Yeah, it's always cool when you have a big event in an area and kind of funneling some of those tickets to the youth wrestlers and giving them an opportunity, because all the kids that are in Who's Number One grew up watching Who's Number One, right? And so giving the local kids in that area that same opportunity is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys. There's people in Iowa that do really good stuff. Guy that runs Wrestling for Life, and it's a project that just donates gear and tickets to kids. He's from Iowa, so up the road, not in Iowa City, but from up the road. There's a lot of good people in Iowa doing that stuff. The message board said that that we should have advertised more locally. That there wasn't much presence around town. Like hardcore fans knew about it. Super fans knew about it, but we would have got a lot more people there, they said, if we had ads in newspapers and billboards or something. I don't know.
It's tricky because it's a niche event in a niche sport, for being honest. I mean, we're trying to get wrestling as big as possible, and it's good for everybody and definitely good for us. Mm-hmm. But even when you talk to college fans, they're not, a lot of them are college fans first and then wrestling fans second. So they're not going to be, they're not going to take an evening and to go watch even the best high school wrestling event of the year, or the most, dramatic and exciting one and most concentrated and consumable. But they're still they're saving their wrestling weekends for however many they get with their friends and family or whatever for actual Iowa Hawkeye matches. So the fact that you could get it out to the greater public, but it's not like a movie where everyone just kind of decides, all right, let's go see Avengers or something that everybody can agree on. This is
I think
this is a very narrow band of people that are interested.
Yeah, I think there's something to it though. I mean the fact that they're probably Hawkeye centric and college centric first. I think if we did a little minimal advertising, we would have. But for year two, we bring it back there. We bring it back there again. I think word of mouth spreads, and I think I think we easily get higher attendance there if we say right now or very soon that it's going to be back there, because I think good things will be said about it. Also, a couple people made this suggestion that we should have had some Iowa high schoolers on there, which, it would have. I bet you if we had a couple Iowa guys like high schoolers in there, it would have drew better. But I don't know. And I knew that going in, and I knew that at Lehigh when we had high school kids. I'm not going to break. I'm not going to put somebody on the card just for attendance. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stick with the criteria. I'm going to stick with the criteria. You know what I mean? Listen, I would have loved to have Drake Ayala. Drake Ayala 100% is at that level. I could have easily put Drake Ayala on that card and drew a lot more fans. But once you start messing with that, once you start hand picking, the credibility of the event, right? I don't want to mess with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking. One of the dads brought up in the whole history of the event, there's only been one Iowa guy there, and he technically isn't an Iowa native. It's Freddie Stroker, right? Freddie moved around a lot because his father was in the military.
That's crazy. There's only been one.
Now, part of that and Will, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, and maybe it's just the way the rankings played out, but doesn't Iowa also have some kind of pretty strict rules about preseason events that involve higher caliber guys? Because I believe that the IA Wrestle guys have mentioned that they've kind of had some things, some ways that they've had to go about putting on their events where they bring in high-level guys and something to do with travel and money and calling it all-star and just the fact that it's preseason. I don't know if that directly affected any past Who's Number Ones, but just kind of putting it all together.
No, I don't. There wasn't any. I mean, I don't recall anybody from Iowa. We never not had somebody from Iowa because of their state federation rules and bylaws. But I distinctly remember year one having to jump through a couple hoops and get everything approved by their state. What is it? IHSAA.
Yeah.
I remember having to write certain things explaining the event, and we did have to do that. We had to do it for Missouri as well. But ever since then, I mean, those two states have been clear. But yeah, I didn't even realize Iowa was that was the only time there was an Iowa kid. How about there was no PA kids? Is that insane?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only guy that wrestled in Pennsylvania is Bill Bartlett, and he's Arizona.
Yeah. Originally from Arizona.
So back to the wrestling. What was next? Voinovich?
Well, we mentioned Figueroa over Poulin was 10-0 in freestyle. My question is, real quick, is Richie going to get a tougher match this year? Steve-O is on the Cadet World Team. He's having a great season, or had a great season before this. Who's getting to Richie Figueroa?
Well, Joey Cruz is going to come down.
Well, that's certainly a contender.
Yeah, so that's 113 is kind of crazy, like insanely good. If the guys come down, then they're going to come down. Now, listen, we had two guys in Who's Number One, Richie Figs and Steve-O Poulin, both on the Cadet World Team. And listen to Joey Cruz is going to come down to 113, and Greg D. I am told, actually Steve-O told me this, that Greg D is probably going to come 113 when he comes back.
So that certainly adds some depth to 113.
Imagine those state finals.
Yep. Well, that's a fun wrinkle. With Richie, so pound for pound, you moved him up to number 3. Big board, he's number 2 now. I wonder if he has a better argument to be number 1 now. I mean,
who's that, Figs?
Yeah. I know. I talked to him afterwards. I said, Richie, we've never had a guy go 3-0 at this event. He's like, I got you, Nomad. I'll be there next year. Whoever you want to put me up against, I'll get you to 3-0. So
it's what do you guys think about on this topic? I don't know how we could apply. I know most of our listeners are college listeners on FRL as opposed to high school, but how the rankings play out and guys sitting and everything. Does Richie deserve to be the number 1 pound for pound? He's lost more recently than Ferrari and Amos, but the Ferrari and Amos also don't wrestle as much as them. And certainly not Ferrari, but Ferrari, that's based on Ferrari's been out this whole year with an injury. And I go to do the pound for pound rankings, and I'm like, man, it's tough not to jump these guys that are out here wrestling. But it's neither one
all the time.
There's neither one of their faults, right? Yeah, he wrestles all the time. I don't know.
Braxton's issue is not participation.
It's lack of competition.
Yeah, Braxton's issue is he's not able to hit the guys. I mean, he goes Super 32. He goes to Ironman. He goes Powerade. He goes to Fargo, Cadet Trials, Junior Trials. It is not as though he is running from anyone. He just hasn't hit a lot of top guys.
It's about perception too, right? Because the fact of the matter is he can destroy the number 2 or number 3 guy and nobody's impressed because he already has those expectations, right? We already have him on this pedestal, right? So nobody gets impressed with anything Braxton does because he's already expected to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, to your point, though, about guys being injured or not wrestling and wanting to give the benefit of the doubt to the guys that are out on the streets, the guys that are taking those competitions, and even if they drop one or two, to still, give them the benefit of the doubt, I'm very sympathetic to that. However, I should probably remember that the NCAA rankings, the pound for pound, right now has Seth Gross at number 1, and he hasn't wrestled except for one match at the beginning of last year. So I probably can't empathize or sympathize too much. I think it's debatable, and I understand arguments saying either Seth Gross should be number 1 or what you just said, should Richie Figueroa get number 1 because he wrestles more than AJ Ferrari through no fault of his own. But I think pound for pound, you can kind of look at it and just say, like, okay, who are you drafting number 1? Who is the most dominant guy? That kind of thing.
It's tough because if you look at the longest winning streaks, AJ, I don't remember the last time AJ lost a freestyle folk style match to guys in his age group, and I don't remember the last time. I guess the last time Braxton did was to AJ.
Well, last time Braxton lost would have been
Akron
cadet trials last year.
Right. Oh, he didn't lose to AJ though, did he?
Lost
No,
to
He lost to
Cardenas,
Card-
and then he beat him on the backside.
But Ferrari, I imagine his last one was maybe freshman year Reno.
Yeah. No, we had that article building a blue chip on both those guys, and kind of just went through their
John
high
Foster.
school careers. John Foster wrote those up, did a lot of research, got a lot of quotes, talked to the kids themselves, so you could find them, building a blue chip, if you just put that into our search bar. And that was, I remember the AJ Ferrari, because a lot of people, because he's been inactive, you kind of forget how dominant he's been, and it's since Reno, I'm almost positive. If you go through the article, you can go through it, and the names that he's taken out are the top of the high school echelon. So
Yeah, that was Reno as a freshman.
yeah,
And it was somebody really good. It was somebody legit.
So yeah, well, I think it's a good argument to have. I think you got it right, but I certainly could understand, guys being behind Richie and putting him up. Another thing that I thought was interesting going in, and this kind of speaks to the quality of the kids that we had at Who's Number 1. Had it not been for injuries, had it not been for AJ being injured and Dustin Plott getting injured at the 11th hour, we would have had all 14 pound-for-pound guys in the rankings entering Who's Number 1. All of them would have been there.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
Yeah. Nobody said no. Nobody pulled out. All the pound-for-pound guys would have been there had it not been for injuries.
good for them for being willing to
line.
put that ranking on the line, realizing that high school,
man.
it's about taking on new challenges and getting to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to see.
That's one of the things. I don't root for anybody. I don't root for anybody. But with the thing that Jesse Mendez went through a war, and then he went through another war, and Shane Van Ness earned it, right? Shane Van Ness is amazing, by the way. But it's like, man, Jesse sort of earned it all summer. And then not only did I say Jesse defended at Who's Number One, I said, Jesse, go through a four-man and defend it against these savages.
Yeah.
And, and he came up just short. But I told his dad afterward, I said, listen, he might have took a loss, but all he did was elevate his status, right? He took a loss, and people want him more than ever. So
yeah, I hope people watch those and go back, even in the loss. He wrestles a fun style too. I mean, this is a guy that you're going to want to circle on the calendar when he's going to compete, because look at especially when he wrestles freestyle. He is no hesitation when he goes to those back arches and suplexes. It's pretty rare for guys of his age and development level in the U.S. when you come from everybody coming from the folk style background. It's fun. So I think he acquitted himself awesomely, even in the loss. And I hope people are going to be excited to see him, Jesse Mendez's career as he continues.
Yeah, what a great group of kids they are too. And,
That whole group was awesome.
I guess I was going to go in match order, but let's just talk about that final match real quick. And the utter repetition that Shane Van Ness will give up some points, but that dude is coming. And he said it in his press conference. I mean, not that it was predictive, but he knew it, and we've seen it before. He'll fall in a hole and he'll come back. He said in the press conference, "I will end up breaking you." And I don't know if he broke anybody, but he definitely
used his pace.
That pace was a factor, you know. And it's like going to continue to be a thing, right?
Yeah, older guys that have put their hands on Shane, you know, when this is middle of his sophomore year, are saying this kid's college ready in terms of pace and hand fighting and being able to withstand a 7-minute match. And it showed that, right? And all those kids, you know, Mendez was right there with them the whole time, right? So all these kids are also on that level and are going to be – and that's just – I mean, we've known this, right, for years, right? The kids, they come into college more ready now.
Yeah, they come into high school more ready.
It's cliche, but I couldn't believe that group of 4 at 132 were high school kids. I like seriously, like Shane and Jesse. I mean, for as much as I just said you should watch Jesse Mendez every time he wrestles, you should watch every one of those 4 guys. Shane Van Ness, that pace, he's not gonna give you a boring match, no matter what happens.
Never.
Those guys,
he's gonna be pushing it.
The kids, they're so good, so young these days. It is ridiculous. I mean, I've been around the best high school wrestling for 25 years. Like, I was fortunate enough to go to a school that went to the best tournaments, and I remember the first Who's Number One just being in awe of Eric Guerrero. I was like, what is that? That is, because that's awesome out there, what's happening right now. and certain other high schoolers. And the kids these days are just, I mean, they're better than ever at that age. But Shane Van Ness, I think we knew how good he was last year. Okay, so probably 1 year ago today, we did not know how good he was. And then we found out.
Start.
Yeah, well.
Couldn't get into the Blair lineup.
He couldn't even get in the lineup, yeah. But then he goes to Super 32 and does all that work. And he backs it up in Ironman, and he might have taken a couple of losses along the way. No harm in losing to Bo Bartlett in the final match of his regular season. But I think because he wasn't very active during the summer in the freestyle, and the one time that he went 0-1. I don't know exactly what the case was there. He lost to a very good.
He broke his tooth. He talked about it in his interview afterwards. He flashed to me.
Did he?
His front tooth got knocked out
in that match with Rachi.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think because his summer was so quiet, I think we didn't talk about him as much. We didn't probably prop him up as much until it came to time to promote Who's Number One. I mean, there wasn't really any reason to talk about him because he wasn't at Fargo or anything, and he didn't have that run at Akron. I mean, dude, he's a junior. There are juniors flying off the boards right now.
Oh, yeah. Both guys uncommitted, the 2 finals.
Where is Shane Van Ness? Where's Shane? Yeah, but for Jesse, it's a little different because
he's got another year.
Technically, nobody can talk to him. Nobody can recruit him. He's a sophomore. But Van Ness is open season, and this dude did work. So with all these juniors flying off the board, man, where is Shane Van Ness going to go? He has to be as coveted as anybody right now.
Yeah,
for sure. Stock way up.
He mentioned in his interview that, I asked him, do you have a timeline, right? Because I don't think it's really fair to ask kids, especially after they're coming off the mat, like, where are you going? But I said, what's your timeline, right? Do you kind of have a plan? And he said he's going to take some visits right now and let the process play out. So based on that, I don't think we're going to see him commit for a little while, and especially, so Iron Man's coming up in, 2 months?
December
right?
12th or 13th.
Yeah, so a little over 2
like
months. So unless he takes all 5 visits right now and really something hits,
no.
then
that's not going to happen.
I don't expect him to commit till spring or summer next year.
Yeah. It's just interesting. I don't know. Because we always speculate. And I'll tell you what, with juniors starting to commit so early, like so early, it's like it catches us off guard. We don't even have time to think about it. We don't even have time to hear what their schools are. And the next thing you know, these juniors are committing so early. But Shane Van Ness is certainly at the top of most recruiting lists, especially if you need the weight. And we'll see. His dad was a stud for Rutgers. So
I think last year Ashnall actually broke his dad's win record at Rutgers.
Yeah.
So you got to imagine they're in play. Can we talk about how much more exciting the freestyle matches were?
I think that's worth
literally every match that we've pretty much hit on outside the Figueroa one has been the freestyle matches, and in my opinion, were much more entertaining.
I can't argue that. Go ahead, Willie.
I didn't realize that the freestyle matches were the most exciting ones.
I mean, Kennedy Facundo was really good. But I think outside of that, the talk of the town was mainly the freestyle matches.
That's why I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. I've been in a fog since who's number one.
Well, like you said, you were in the tunnel for some of it. Watching it at home, like Kyle and I both were, it was like a clear slowdown. Not in that the wrestlers were slowing or not pushing the pace. It is just the style and the rule set that gives you a faster pace match, or I don't know if pace is the right word, but you could tell there was a downshift of gears because the college or folk style rules, it's more control, it's more of a grind, it's 3 periods, it's longer, and then meanwhile freestyle is
out of bounds is not lava. Out of bounds is safe,
and there's no refuge for out of bounds. Yeah, I think I mean that right there is an easy one to go a long way, but that's a whole nother topic of rule changes.
So I didn't just connect the dots. I've been sort of, as soon as Who's Number One was done, I sort of not relaxed, but it was, you get out of there late and you say hi to some people, and the next day I was paranoid. I was like, I got to get rankings done before Super 32. I got to get preview stuff done. So I've been cranking away. I haven't gone back and listened to the interviews yet. I haven't watched a couple of matches even. But I got all these, there was a lot of tweets I saw out there like, keep everything freestyle. And I thought it was just freestyle fans being freestyle fans and saying it's a superior style, which I don't necessarily disagree with. But I didn't connect the dots that, those were the most action-packed matches.
There was, to be fair to the other side, there were people that I saw voicing their opinion saying it should all be folk style for a couple of reasons. One, I think a lot of, pure college fans are still wary of freestyle and rather everything just be the style that they're familiar with. And then they brought up a point which I'm wondering if you could respond to, because I think we all know, but it's probably worth talking about or mentioning. They said it should all be folk style because the high school season is folk style and you're ranking these guys for folk style, so why shouldn't they be competing in the style that's going to be the basis of their rankings for the most part going forward?
I think there's a couple reasons for it. One reason I think freestyle is more exciting. But listen, I don't really choose anymore. This year I was almost completely hands off. There was a couple matches that I said this match has to be this. But other than the majority of them, the kids chose a style. So
right, and you want to make it as enticing as possible. They're not obligated in under any way whatsoever to participate in the event, so you want to make it attractive also, for them to wrestle in.
Attractive, and also for some of them, it wouldn't be wholly fair. You're gonna ask kids that trained all summer and made world teams They just wrestled at Worlds, and you're going to come back here and tell them to ride somebody out? I'm not doing that, number one. Number two, the majority, there's a very few, except for kids like Yabara. Name a guy on this card that's not going to get tested in folk style. So it's not like there's nobody. There's very few situations where they're one-trick ponies. It's like, oh, he's only good in freestyle. They're going to be tested. Most of these kids go to top folk style tournaments, which are coming. They're right around the corner. So
Super 32 this weekend.
They're not insulated in any way.
Right. It's also worth pointing out that NCAA rankings, we don't consider freestyle matches because you have a self-contained season where everybody hits each other, and then obviously an NCAA season or NCAA championship at the end of the year, which is obviously all folk style. But high school has always been different. You've always incorporated high school results. These guys are operating in different parts of the country, and they don't see each other that much. So you have to blend both styles and the results from tournaments and matches from both styles to get a full, set of data points you can use to rank with.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about this because David Carr asked me the same thing in the green room. He's like, "Hey, why aren't these guys all wrestling folk style? There's folk style rankings." And I'm like, David, just think about it. As far as counting freestyle, you win Fargo. Do you think that should not count in the rankings? And he's like, oh, yeah, of course. That should absolutely count. So he immediately got it.
Good explanation, though, man.
Yeah, like it's just kind of, and as Space said, the NCAA rankings are a wholly separate thing because there's one season and everybody does the same thing. That is not remotely possible in high school.
No, and think about what's the last major that sets the table for who's number one?
Fargo.
So they're going to arrive at their.
My answer too.
They're gonna arrive at their ranking. No, I got in trouble for saying Fargo. Anyway, they're gonna arrive at their ranking. Sorry, I'm just gonna say it. Remember how I was doing Fargo because me and Christian just it's a stupid based off a comic who says his G's as J's. There was people at Fargo saying I was being racist. I was like, it's Fargo. Well, how's that racist? Anyway.
It's a goof.
Well, where was I now?
So guys have to compete.
Oh yeah, they're gonna arrive at their ranking based on freestyle at Fargo, and then you want them to wrestle folk style? They demand to wrestle folk style. I mean, doesn't make sense.
I think we handle it right. I think you do it right when you let the kids decide.
Beyond that, the wrinkle this year that the higher ranked guy for the most part chooses was extremely interesting because Mendez versus Jack, it was like pretty obvious, I feel, to everybody that Jesse was going to choose freestyle even before it was kind of announced. And yet
Ryan Jack said that.
What's up?
Ryan Jack said that that's the first freestyle match he's wrestled in his life.
I believe it, but he came out and he looked really good. And I saw him, working with his brother in parterre and working in situations. And so clearly they prepared him and he took it seriously. And again, he lost, but I thought it was an extremely impressive performance by Ryan Jack.
Sure was.
And then you had the wrinkle of, okay, so Mendez wins and he's the number one guy, right? So once he wins, we know that he gets the pick for the next one. If Serrano had won, they were going to pick folk, but then Van Ness won, so they picked free, and then he loses. Voinovich Vasquez, right? It was interesting that they went folk because Vasquez dominated on his feet, but then Voinovich is an absolute killer on top.
Power halves. Hurt my arms looking at him.
Patty chose.
Let's talk about that one real quick, though.
Go ahead.
Because we're running pretty long.
And you can get more Who's Number One talk tomorrow on Who's Number One, the show.
Well, we gotta figure out
Super 32
and Super 32. Yeah. We should mention Super 32.
If we get seeds by tomorrow, I'd like to release the seeds on Who's Number One tomorrow for Super 32. But Voinovich and Vasquez, what to make of it? Because Vasquez was super slick on his feet, and so what do you take away? I mean, who's more impressive in that match? Voinovich gets the win, but I don't know if But Jesse gets the takedowns, and Jesse gets turned like not easily, but like on the third attempt, it would look pretty dang easy. So I don't know. I don't know what to really make of that, other than Voinovich is pretty darn good on top.
Well, I thought the takeaway is that Voinovich is a hammer on top, and not that he wasn't on the radar of college coaches, but, you know, it's college wrestling, right? As much as we're talking about how awesome freestyle is and how it was an exciting wrinkle this year, ultimately, how these guys are going to get to college is folk style. And to me, Voinovich just, put his name on it that he's one of the best top guys in the country.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then let's go to Sonny Santiago, Travis Mastrogiovanni, sort of a low-scoring, controlled bout. Oh, let's talk about this, though, because this is what – you get a lot of stuff about this. Mastro's takedown on the edge. Number one, I kind of thought it was two. I think that the referees were a little concerned with the out of bounds. And let me talk about the out of bounds because I wasn't really happy about it. I don't know why they didn't send black strips of mat for the side. I was really upset. I didn't like that. As soon as I saw the mat, I was like, not good. There's no protection area, especially when the circle goes that close to the edge. So I was disappointed. I wish we had more of a protection zone. And I don't know if that came into the play of the call, but it wasn't our choice not to have extra mat there. So that answers that. It wasn't our choice not to have extra protection there. And it was the same thing last year at Lehigh, and I said we needed more protection. All we needed is a couple black strips of mat, and then we didn't have it, and that was disappointing. Let's go to Etchemendia Saunders, and I'm just going to say it. Etchemendia, for those that don't know, Etchemendia took SATs Saturday morning before the match. So he got done with the verbal portion, and he started his warm-up.
It's a normal day, SATs and who's number one.
And the plan is for Etchemendia to start at 141 this year at some point for Iowa State. And I'm going to say it, when Willie's Crystal Ball, the next iteration of those rankings come out, I'm having Etchemendia as an All-American because I don't care. He might get ridden. That's fine. Why take bottom? Probably take neutral. We can do ride him. As long as he doesn't get turned like a top, he's beaten a lot of people. And so I don't care.
So that makes it interesting for Iowa State's lineup. They have a All-American at 49, and Jarrett Degan and Ian Parker is a national qualifier, has some decent wins. He's penciled in at 141 right now. Austin Gomez, I think, round to 12 at 133. So their lightweights are already looking pretty solid. So one of those guys is going to have to find a new spot, probably Ian Parker.
I wonder if they could pump up, or no, because David's there, right?
David could go 65, I guess.
They could
and everybody
theoretically
goes
bump everybody up.
And then Chase Straw would probably be the odd man out.
They could theoretically bump everybody up, but if I'm David, I'm like, not this year. I ain't doing it this year.
Right.
I'm going 57 where I could win a title, and letting that chaos that is 65 all graduate next year.
Mm-hmm.
That would seem to move. And Dagan obviously earned a spot with an All-American finish last year. But it's a good problem for Coach Dresser to have. More solid guys than you have spots. It's certainly not the first time that's happened on the D1 level in an elite program.
Yeah, they'll cross that bridge when they get to it. But I thought Etchemendia's neutral game was just flat out amazing. Howard over Mastro 4-2. Early takedown. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Bartlett over Sokol, same kind of match. It was like, one guy led from the start. But we have to talk about Keegan O'Toole, and I came out of the tunnel. I was, back in the tunnel, and I came out, and I looked up on the big screen, and the scoreboard said 8-1, and I said, "What the hell's going on out here?
The heck's that's going on out there?
8-1? I mean, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I mean, for all the great wrestling we saw Saturday night, I mean, Shane Van Ness and Keegan O'Toole. I mean, he had to be just one of the most impressive guys. He was playing chess, man. I mean, his positioning, his body awareness, his tricks, his feel. I mean, just utterly impressive, right, guys?
Yeah,
100%.
And Keegan, he was really fired up at that match. I got to talk to Keegan a lot because we get this big van, and kind of ended up that Keegan was the only one that needed rides to and from the whole time. So I got to spend a lot of time with him, and he felt he had a very good game plan. Felt his coaches had a real good read on the stuff that Patty was going to do, and that's kind of exactly how it played out, right? So Keegan really took this seriously and did his homework, and then went out and executed against a Fargo champ, right? An incredibly talented wrestler that a whole bunch of Big Ten schools are after. So to do that to a guy of Patty Gallagher's caliber,
Gallagher's caliber,
extremely impressive.
Yeah, the scrambling, right? I mean, O'Toole, the Askren pedigree in Wisconsin, far ankle scrambles. It was all. I mean, you can't be like a textbook scrambler. That's kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
But he he demonstrated exactly how you want to get your scrambling game up to. And a guy like Gallagher, I think, give him another year, give him some time in a D1 room. And he's not. It's going to be a different match, obviously. But right now at this level, O'Toole's scrambling is probably the best in high school.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like Gallagher now has stuff to work on, and if he doesn't improve on it, it's going to be problems going forward. But Keegan said in his interview, he said, "I'm the best scrambler in the country." He's like, I feel comfortable saying that at the high school level that no one can scramble with me.
Be hard to argue that.
Honestly, I think Patty made a mistake by choosing freestyle. I'm not saying that Keegan doesn't win if they wrestle folk style. I'm saying that I think it would be a closer match. I mean, look at how Keegan scored his last exposure. Just genius. I mean, ultra impressive. Go back and watch that. His last exposure was just awesome. And then the last one, Patrick Kennedy over Facundo, and I don't know. I picked Kennedy to win, although I had no earthly clue, really. I mean, if Facundo won that, obviously not surprised. I think. Were you guys surprised on the result?
Yeah.
I mean,
not like shocked, but I picked Facundo to win for a reason. I thought he was a little better. But I kind of went against my own normal thinking, which is take the offensive guy over the defensive guy, and it kind of played out like that, right? Kennedy was much more offensively minded than Alex.
I think here's what's noticeable to me. I think Facundo is in a place right now where he's not incredibly offensively diverse. I think he only really right now against the elite of the elite, he only has a couple real attacks, and I think what's going to happen. I think we're because if you watch, it's not just in this Kennedy match; it's back to Akron. He had some really close first periods. I mean, he had like a quarterfinal first period where it was like 1-0 shot clock or something.
He was down late in a earlier round match.
Yeah, he had a match where he was down late. He had a match where he might not have scored a takedown against Mastro or had just one takedown in the whole match or something like that. And so he's not really offensively prolific right now. But I think that's like a timeline thing. I think that's an evolution thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that Alex is gonna, he's this, he's this, he's this. He might have went like this for a second, and then he's gonna go like that again. So that's what I see happening to Facundo, and I think he's gonna be amazing, as we all thought he was gonna be. But
To me, the main takeaway was Kennedy's finishes, Willie.
The horseshoe.
The first takedown, and again, this kind of speaks to how good Facundo is defensively. That Pat Kennedy, who we've known he's had that ankle pick for a long time, he goes low level right on the ankle pick. Then he gets kind of mid level, right, tries to shelf it. Then he tucks under his ankle, goes high level, right, and tree tops it.
Yep.
And mind you, we have seen Facundo multiple times with his leg up in the air, tree topped on a kid's shoulder, and not only not give up the takedown, sometimes he scores off of that. Sometimes he freaking scores off of that. And then, so he still can't finish, and then he has to go to what, as Spay was saying, what Mike calls the horseshoe finish, right, where you bring it down, kind of sweep it. So that, to again get back to your point about how high level these guys are still in the high school level, that's 4 different levels of finishes, 4 different heights on your single leg.
He's running through progressions like as a quarterback. He's checking down.
He really did.
To finish your attack.
He really did. I mean, the fact that we saw the exact same thing play out twice is like he was literally going through a progression. And how good is Facundo that he defends the first 3? I mean,
right,
just really high level stuff. And it was neat to close out, other than the Van Ness Mendez match to kind of close it out with future Hawkeye winning in.
They got loud. The crowd loved it, and then the post-match interview, Kennedy and Navarro, all the guys were saying the right things about how they were pumped to wrestle in Carver Hawkeye, and if you were a Hawkeye fan, that is something to be looking forward to, and I'm glad they got those moments.
Well, and also clear is that, the support of the Hawkeyes, right? Alex Marinelli, when Patrick Kennedy gets to Iowa City, that's going to be his guy, right? And so I imagine, kind of the way I see it, Kennedy's going to redshirt, and then once Marinelli goes out, he's going to be their 65, and Marinelli's going to be the Hawkeye Club, and that's going to be Marinelli's guy, right? That's going to be the guy that he's going to progress and try to get to the next level and try to help turn into a national champ. So it was really cool to see their relationship and how seriously Kennedy takes being a Hawkeye and being a leader and wanting to keep that program going towards the national title.
Yeah, I thought it was a big moment for Iowa and for Iowa's recruiting. I mean, to see not only a future Hawkeye do what he did, but also the crowd behind him, and also you very obviously could tell he was carrying the flag for future Hawkeyes, I thought. So that was who's number 1.
We should. I'd like to bring up real quick, and we don't have to talk about the match because it was a blow up, but the super match that we put together last minute, and famously or not famously, but you had talked about how we tried to get matches with current Hawkeyes, with Gilman, with Spencer, and for reasons out of everyone's control, everybody wanted those matches to happen, and we couldn't get it done. And then last minute, coming off ADCCs, I know it's grappling, and it was a blowout. So it was Pat Downey as a world level wrestler, Nick Rodriguez. They trained together at NJRTC. Nick Rodriguez is a top-level no-gi jiu-jitsu guy. I don't really know much about jiu-jitsu. Nomad's getting more into it. He's the grappling nomad now for that event. He was pitching in with our co-site, our Flow grappling site. But they got together, they did a match, and it got a lot of traction in the grappling community, which I don't think a lot of wrestling fans realize is a huge thing. They operate completely professionally, so they are bringing money into their sport is the only way that it exists. There's no schools that support it, no high schools, no colleges. And you got a whole bunch of eyeballs. Can't reveal the numbers, just like Netflix is not going to reveal their numbers for every streaming thing that they have. But it got a lot of attention, it got a lot of attraction, and I think we can all agree that it is good for wrestling. It's good for who's number 1 and us, obviously, the more people that watch. But it's cool that this big grappling community is now getting more involved with wrestling.
I saw you defending our honor and defending our choice to have
just the idea.
Match. Spay was going back and forth with a group of guys on a message board, and I wanted to jump in, but those guys were so silly on their assertions. Basically, everything a couple of those guys were saying, we have the numbers to say, no, you're not smart. You're not. You don't. You on this topic, you're
it was trying to say that, well, this does absolutely no good for anybody, and the grappling community isn't that really big anyway. Like,
let's go back to ADCCs when we put a lot of content on wrestling for ADCCs, and some people were like, all right, enough of this. This is a wrestling site. What's this doing on here? If you don't think the cross promotion of wrestling to grappling, grappling to wrestling, and even into combat and MMA, if you don't think that is helpful in growing the sport, we have all the data, right? We just had a good chunk of data that says people across platforms, people across sports are digging each other. It's neat. I don't know why to be a hater. If you don't particularly like jiu-jitsu, go get a soda during that match or something. But a lot of people,
it wasn't a jiu-jitsu match. They didn't even wrestle. They didn't even grapple out there. It was basically a freestyle match.
Yeah.
And I agree. I'm not going to sit and watch jiu-jitsu myself. But the fact that something big like that, the fact that Daniel Cormier fights in the MMA and is one of the biggest stars in UFC is good for wrestling because he elevates the profile of the sport to a huge level.
Right. I mean, Daniel Cormier, I was looking for a picture for the rankings. I was looking for a picture for the Super 32 lightweight preview because I used Maximo Renteria. And so I went on Tony Rotundo's site and was looking for a picture of Maximo Renteria. And I'm going through the pictures, and there's Daniel Cormier, the biggest star in UFC, the multiple-time world belt holder. There's Daniel Cormier coaching in the California high school state finals.
Yeah, love to see
that's cool stuff, But another thing that was cool about it is, I promise you, most of those fans in attendance, they don't know who Nicky Rodriguez is. But they were oohing and ahhing. Right? Yeah. They got into it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, they're both beasts. I mean, you put 30, 40 pounds on Pat Downey, who's already this huge guy, then you got another monster on your hands. And they put on a show, and they did it. I was assuming it would be something like that. Downey's not going to try to disappoint when he gets a chance to wrestle Carver Hawkeye finally. So it was just fun. And it's almost like you have a weird axe to grind if you're trying to say that, well, I don't like that there's nothing out there. So I had to get on my soapbox a little bit and say, of course it's a positive. Of course it's not a negative.
Also, they want to say that no one cares about grappling. Well, FloWrestling has over 1 million followers on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and grappling has more than us.
Yeah. I mean, those are the numbers we can reveal.
It's an international audience because of Brazil and all the other countries that are super involved with jiu-jitsu.
Australia,
ours
Europe.
Is more an American fan base.
I'm hoping that Bo Nickel said something about ADCCs, and I think it's extremely interesting. I would like to see whether it's Bo Nickel or somebody else go into other mixed martial arts areas and see how they do. I mean, I'm not the biggest jiu-jitsu fan in the world. I respect it. I like it. I watch it. I would choose wrestling over it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But I also would love to see our wrestlers compete in other styles. And every time one of our wrestlers compete in MMA, I'm dialed in. So I think it's also certainly compelling and certainly growing the sport.
Jaden Cox posted a rule set he thinks that could be good for when we have wrestlers go against jiu-jitsu guys. That would be fair to both. And then Jason Nolf just posted a clip yesterday of him at a jiu-jitsu practice doing a flying triangle.
Yeah.
So really? These guys are clearly interested in it and it's wanting to cross promote.
Yeah.
Once you see, that's all you need to know. You see the wrestlers themselves, the competitors, the highest elite, the most popular wrestlers in America are saying, here's another avenue for me to ply my trade, to perhaps make some money, which would be nice for them, and raise their profile. Just like the grappling guys, Nick Rodriguez knew that he was going to get more eyeballs on him if he did this match. Just like, Bo Nickel knows if he goes to ADCCs, that's a way to raise his profile. We're not looking at a downside here.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll tell you this too. Embrace it because it ain't gonna stop. This is if you don't like the cross promotion, if you don't like grappling, infiltrating into wrestling and wrestling infiltrating into grappling, do some soul searching. You're going to have to suck it.
It's the same thing that happened when MMA, when guys started crossing over and everybody said it's bad for wrestling because they're, not focusing on wrestling the whole time. And you have to have a broader mind, and you have to listen to the athletes. They're the ones that are pushing these things.
Why
these
not
crossovers.
try it?
Yeah.
Like, why not? It's not going to hurt anything.
No.
Yeah, and I think it's for like a Bo Nickel, Jason Nolf, Jaden Cox was obviously following it pretty well, and others. There's probably a laundry list of
David Taylor was tweeting about it.
Top wrestlers that were. Listen, they've been doing this thing since they were 5, and they are all very cerebral. I mean, think about the guys that we're talking about. They're all very cerebral wrestlers. Do you not think it's utterly tantalizing to them to play around with other techniques, to play around with another art form? I mean, they probably, wrestling is a very pressure-packed sport. Do or die, win, compete, bang. And now there's a little of this grappling going around, and they say, hey, it'd be neat to play around, no pressure, just enjoy something, just have fun, just learn. I mean, that's probably another reason why they're embracing it.
Yeah, it's a total different pace. I mean, the rules obviously dictate how you're going to compete, but you can see, if you're a high-level wrestler and you see how the grappling matches are going, these high-level grapplings, you could probably see the gears turn in their heads and go, oh, maybe I can learn something from here.
Somebody needs to start like Nomad's Gi Twitter account, because Nomad. So when we were in Kazakhstan, we knew that the ADCs were coming up, and when we had downtime, me and Nomad were talking a little bit about grappling and the prior IBJJF Worlds and ADCC champions, and we're talking about it. And Nomad's getting hyped for it. So we come home, and the next weekend we start watching ADCCs, and it's probably the first live match that Nomad has ever seen in grappling.
Mm-hmm.
And and we're chatting back and forth online and watching this stuff, and he goes, hey, I ain't saying, but I'm saying I was pretty good in those situations. So we might see Nomad make his world debut in jiu-jitsu.
2021 ADCC champ, baby.
All right.
Good luck with that.
Thanks, Faye. Appreciate the well wishes.
I will be watching anytime you compete in anything, my friend. That was who's number one. That was a nice rundown. Any other final thoughts? We have rounded the hour mark already.
Yeah, I think tomorrow watch for who's number or go to who's number one. We're going to be talking a lot about Super 32. I've been begging them for the seeds. I'd like to do a seed release if possible. Weight changes closed last night, so everything's set there. I think the seeds should be able to be done by tonight, and then we can get them, and it would be cool to have a show like that. If not, we'll just talk generally about Super 32. But why don't we go to some Q's from F's, Andrew Spey?
Let's do some Q's from F's. Super 32, and then we're going to be counting down to the NCAA season, so get ready for those topics coming back on FRL in the future. So one question that came up from Pops Redfoot, ask any American awards as cool as the cape and hat that Gilman won. Gilman went out ahead in like a vanguard before the rest of the team that Eric Guerrero brought with a bunch of other competitors and coaches to Dagestan to compete in the Continental Cup. There was another one, I don't even know that, like Yusef Abdul Salamov. Never heard of that one before, and I try to keep up with Dagestani tournaments, but Gilman went out there on his own, was the only American in that. He won, and Pops points out, I think Tbilisi used to give out something similar to the OW. They did. If you go to the Wrestling Hall of Fame, the one in Stillwater, they have the capes. They're these big, they're like pelts. They're like big furry mats with a hole cut in for your head. And I know Dan Gable won it, and you also get a choice of either like a hat or a sword. I think Dan Gable got the sword. Dave Schultz won it, and I think Kenny Monday won one of the last Tbilisi OWs. Tbilisi is the capital of Georgia, and they used to have the toughest wrestling tournament outside of the world. Some would say tougher because back then the Soviet Union had all the ex-Soviet countries obviously in one, and there was not any movement. There was not, if you get blocked in the Soviet Union, you're emigrating or you're changing federations. They did not allow that. You did not have that option. So you literally had what used to be just one Soviet wrestler to go through at Worlds or Olympics. Now you have 10 or 20 or however many. So that was the premier wrestling event in the 80s and the Cold War and all through that. And Gilman won, and they gave him something similar. So what are some other cool...
There are 2 college opens
Yes.
that give out incredible awards.
Let's hear them.
Helmet.
One, the Edinburgh Open, you get a sword.
Swords are always A+
How do you get
awards.
it through security? TSA?
I don't know.
Ship it. You gotta wrap that up and send it through
But
UPS.
you get a sword. And then the Clarion Open, you get like a warrior helmet.
All right,
Yeah.
so someone needs to offer a shield, and then someone needs
if
to
you
win
win,
all 3,
as
and
I
then
say,
literally just go into battle and start ripping people up.
Yeah.
So you got Edinburgh, Clarion, and then Bloomsburg should come out with one where you get a battle shield, and then you win. If you sweep PA,
Yep.
then you go fight with the 300.
Yeah, then you fight for Sparta.
It's really funny looking at Twitter at the former Clarion Open champions fresh off the mat and still in their singlets with his battle helmet on. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. All right, good pull there, KB. I agree. I can't think of anything else. I know Journeyman hands out those cool looking hammers. They just had
hammers are cool. Yep.
their
Some tournaments in Russia, they give you cars.
Oh yeah, you get ladas, which are like the old Soviet
You get a lot of ladas.
Yugos. Hey, producer Caleb Blakeman just said you can take your sword in a check bag, according to
What?
TSA Instagram. He just slacked me that. So
I'll tell you what. If somebody gets on my plane with a great sword,
well, it's good to know that our producer knows how you can travel with swords. That he is a
How the hell
swordsman.
Caleb, you took a great sword on an airplane.
He's saying he looked it up or something, but
What?
oh, he's okay. No, he didn't take it. He himself admitted himself that he did not take a sword through customs.
Listen, Blakeman won the Edinburgh Open last year, and then he brought the sword back on the plane to Austin.
I would not mess with Caleb. Caleb would chop us all
been
into
what
pieces if he wanted to. All right, so good question. Maybe there's an opportunity now for Doc Buchanan gives a cowboy hat. That's very distinctive.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It is cool, and they all wear them too on the podium. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I like that. So taking a page from Tbilisi and Abdul Salamov. Sorry. Anyway, good thing. Good idea to make it fun to win these tournaments. Dar of Emor asks, can you list all the pins at who's number 1? We actually did that yesterday. And he can only think of Voinovich this year and Sasso in 2017.
Also, Trent Hidley pinned Julian Ramirez. That one was
Overtime.
Yeah, I'm not gonna call it a fake pin.
Yeah.
But there was a takedown, and he got taken down to his back, and Julian kind of was like, "Damn it!"
We were
It was
talking about that
overtime, wasn't
match.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We were talking about that match the other day in the office, and Spade's like, "Yeah, I would have quit too."
Notorious quitter over here, guilty as charged.
Well, why not? The match is over.
The match is over. It doesn't, it's for the who's number 1. If you're not going to be number 1, that's
points.
it. You're on to number 2.
I mean, here's what I would do. I mean, it's actually it's a long con, because I think what Julian will do is say he had Trent right where he wanted him and got caught. In like 30 years, he'll be like, "Yeah, I wrestled who's number 1. I lost, but I was gonna win, but I got caught." 'Cause
Yeah,
it'll
war
just say
stories.
fall.
It'll totally change. Yeah, but that's it. So not a lot of pins. So that's impressive.
Julian was defending Van Ness. There were some people that were upset with the stop sign and the American flag, and
I thought it was great.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's who's number 1, right? Like the kids can do whatever they want,
And it's explained in the interview. So if you want
But
to,
Julian was like, he was in the Instagram comments. He's like, "Dude, I had a guy eat a hoagie in my face."
yeah.
Like, if anyone has the right to talk about this, I do.
Well, what's
So,
wrong
like,
with the American flag?
Well, I mean, it was because Mendez was the world team member. That's where it comes from.
What if there's nothing wrong? It was just kind of like you're using props. It's some people old school or whatever. It says
get off my lawn.
Yeah, get your hand raised and calmly walk off the mat as if the match did not matter.
The only people in my opinion that have anything to say about it are Jesse and Dom. Like if they're upset about it, that's fine because they're actually in the match.
Cool.
I
think
whatever you think about it, within bounds, within reason, maybe a prop is okay. Have fun with it.
Props are great. More props next year.
Props to props. We can all agree.
Mad props.
All right, another question from Regan Wright, Coach Wright BV. Jesse was the most common name on the Who's Number One bout card.
Yes.
Should I name my kid Jesse to ensure wrestling prowess? Or is the next power name what is the next power name in wrestling? Also, BT Dubs Willie Gravy is not keto. There's a thickener involved, and it is all carbs. So any gravy you add to your diet is going to ruin your keto.
You're a fraud.
Because of the thickeners. You always sleep on the thickeners. How many times have I told you to watch out for those gravy thickeners?
Hey, I've been very, very strict with my diet, but I also don't.
Except for the gravy.
Well, I didn't look up the nutritional information of gravy before,
then they're not being very strict
before I ate it. Well, I don't know.
Right, I mean, let's get back to
had a carb since 2006.
All right, but let's get to the names here. What's the power name? Jesse clearly did well. Ibarra,
Mendez, Ibarra, and Vasquez were on the card.
I don't know. You'd have to go look at like the 2022 big board and see what the most common name is.
And look,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see more of like the Braxton style, and the Jaden is pretty big of all the various spellings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Missouri had Jaden, J''D''N and JAYDIN, which are both
Jaden Gomez.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of Jadens.
All right, so maybe it's Jaden or Jesse.
Anything with a J, really.
Yeah, big on J names.
Big J.
All right, here's an interesting
one.
Yeah.
Back to the previous question.
Oh, okay.
Shop is saying Cleveland State has a shield.
Ooh, good call, AJ
What?
Shop.
Yeah.
There you go.
Savage needs to go out.
EWL.
The former EWL schools are straight savages.
Yeah.
So, why am I not surprised that AJ knows this?
Somebody needs to give out like a crossbow.
He probably
and
won it.
A chain mail. Who gives out chain mail?
Some savage needs to sweep them tournaments and then invade Troy.
And then launch 1,000 ships. Go on a conquering spree. All right, cool. Well, thanks for AJ Shop. Anybody else with some good pulls, let us know. Now we got Austin Denson, who says...
there is one in Dagestan where if you win, you get an AK-47.
Right. Maybe a machete or two. Austin Denson, considering you're probably the most traveled wrestling fans on the planet, maybe. I think some actual competitors and whatnot still have speed. What state has the highest wrestling IQ per common citizen? So if you just grab a rando off the street, where are you going to get the most wrestling knowledge? If you sample,
I don't
100.
know about wrestling IQ, but I know in Iowa I have had the most random conversations with people that clearly are not like FloWrestling subscribers or super into wrestling, that just generally have a knowledge of like the existence of wrestling, like Dan Gable's name, that Iowa's good. So
I got off the plane in Iowa, and I went to the Enterprise counter. I'm walking past the counters, and I walk past the Hertz counter to go to the Enterprise counter, and the guy behind the Hertz is like, Willie Saylor, FloWrestling, right? Yeah.
Here's your whole resume, typed out.
I think Iowa's good. I think Cali people are good. I think PA. They're PA for high school.
Yeah.
Those guys know a lot and like remember state champs and how the bracket played out. And 2004 and stuff like that. And I think Jersey's really good too.
Yeah. Brad Key, any thoughts?
No, I think you guys hit all of them. They're really good.
I will say that Iowans, in my experience, it doesn't matter where you meet them or whatever. If you just bump into an Iowan, they have a higher percentage shot of being able to converse about wrestling with you. They'll always be like, oh yeah, my friend, my relative, or somebody was on a team, or I used to cheerlead and we were at the games at the mats, the duels every week, or anything like that.
Yeah, it touches a lot of people now.
Right. But then you get those pockets, those hotbeds, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. You'll find areas where it's extremely important to that community.
There was one time me and Sacco, Brock Height, I'm pretty sure it was Brock Height, we were at NHSCAs or NHSCA duels, and this guy came in, and he was pretty loosey-goosey. He was like, what's up, fellas? What's going on? But he was like a seafood provider to this restaurant, and he was bringing in. He's like, what's up? He was talking to the guy. He's like, I got like 5 boxes of clams for you, and this and that, and right. And he was like, what's y'all fellas doing here? And me and Brock were like, we're here for a wrestling tournament. He's like, that's cool. That's cool. He's like, I wrestled in high school. We were like, yeah, what'd you do? Where at? And he's like, he said some school in PA, and he's like, I made the state finals. And me and Brock looked at each other, and we were like, nope, no, he didn't. This guy's lying. And because, me, and especially Brock knows everything about PA high school wrestling. And so this guy gave us a line for a while, and he told us about this and that and who he lost to. And I forget who it was, but we clearly recognized the name of the guy that he lost to. He was like some legend. And that even still fueled our fire to the he's lying. He just said a big name. And after he left, we went back and looked it up, and sure enough, this dude was a state runner-up. It's like,
ye of little faith.
We find ex-wrestlers everywhere.
It's participation-wise, it's still higher up there than I think most people realize as far as high school sports. Got a good question. We got time for one or two more from Coach Jason Cook. Coach Jason Cook 1 says, the Caspian Sea is the commonality between a plurality of men's freestyle world medalists. What's in the water? And so, shameless plug, if you go look at the heat maps I last did for the World Championships, you'll see a huge number of Dagestanis, and then you'll see, which borders the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Baku, their capital's right on the Caspian Sea. And the Iranians, they were 3 medalists from Iran, from Mazandaran, which is the southern shores of the Caspian Sea.
Yeah, even within the specific countries, right? You say, okay, Russia's good at wrestling, Iran's good at wrestling. Even the areas within those countries are the ones that the best areas are the ones that touch the Caspian Sea, and then Turkey is Caspian adjacent.
They're more Black Sea,
right? But I'm saying they're next to a country that touches the Caspian Sea.
That hotbed of you go from Iran, and even Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, they had some medalists. So if you go from there and then you just kind of pan over like from Central Asia to the Middle East, and then the Caucasus Mountains, they on one side is the Caspian Sea, on the other side is the Black Sea. They are silly with international wrestling, and then yes, Turkey is on the other side of that mountain range. But Caspian Sea,
good stuff.
Yeah, my only thing would be Caspian Sea is big there, but don't discount for like Ossetians, North and South Ossetians, Georgia, which only borders the Black Sea and not Caspian. So don't sell the other side of the Caucasus Mountains short. But yeah, if you want to, if traveling those parts of the world weren't fraught with so many other difficulties for whatever reasons, that would be your international wrestling vacation trip, is up and down the Caspian.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of you guys have any other thoughts of international wrestling and where to go see it.
No, I'm glad Coach Jason Cook noticed that, because I think you and I had a conversation about it maybe earlier this year about just how Caspian Sea area kicks ass in wrestling.
I agree, it rocks.
As Willie said, who's number 1 on the show tomorrow? I don't even think we've run this, but there's been a really good reaction to it. Bader did an interview and another thing with this guy who's been around the Iowa program for a long time. The video is called "Who's Big Jim Kelly," and I just recommend everybody goes and checks that out.
Maybe we'll have to put that on the front page of www.flowwrestling.org
I imagine
in the
we
near future.
will at some point.
Yeah, very good. All right, gentlemen.
All right, boys.
Trivia question answer. Lane Van Anroy was number 2 at the time, was the last guy to beat AJ Ferrari at Reno Finals.
Was that Reno? Yeah.
And then I think that'll do it for episode 413. Unless anybody has any final thoughts. 413 shouts to Western Massachusetts. Williams College is the only program I know in that area code. But if there's any others out there, sorry I didn't think of them. And good show. Thanks for Christian Piles, who should be back Thursday.
Don't thank Christian Piles. He wasn't
Did
here.
nothing.
He doesn't get any credit for the show.
Well, you didn't let me finish. I said thanks for nothing. That's all the time we got this week, or this day. We'll see you Thursday.
Is he going to be back Thursday?
He should be back.
Is CP going to be back?
I think so.
See you Thursday, CP.
Bye-bye.